This episode is brought to you by Buffalo Trace Distillery. Powerful yet smooth. Contained but never tame. Proudly going their own way, but never going alone. This is the spirit inside Buffalo Trace Bourbon. Made at Buffalo Trace Distillery, the world's most award-winning distillery. Buffalo Trace is always perfectly untamed. Distilled, aged, and bottled by Buffalo Trace Distillery, Franklin County, Kentucky. 90 proof, 45% alcohol by volume. Learn more at buffalotracedistillery.com. Please drink responsibly.
Welcome back to the Boundary Corner podcast. I am Curtis Wilson.
I'm Brian Siegler, buddy. We're back here on a Tuesday night. We're moving past the bitch that was last Friday, and we're gonna put it to bed tonight, and then we're gonna move on to Boston College.
Well, we're gonna go in here. We're gonna make some corrections. We're gonna close the book. Other than the game Friday night, it was a good time. I mean, right? You came over. Kids came over. Kids frolicked. We had drinks. Great food.
Oh, yeah.
At the Wilson Man Cave here.
Had some Genos. Had some G&Ts. Had a little this, little that.
A little this, little that. And then the game came on. And then let's just get right to it. You know, Hokies start 0-1 in the Brent Pry regime era with a loss of 20-17. And a lot of anger on this game. We felt it Friday night. Brian, the game ended about, 10:35-ish? You stayed around my house for another hour as we vented.
Yeah.
It definitely would have been a good reaction podcast, but I don't think us venting in a lot of a little bit of inebriation and a little bit of cursing going on there.
We've done that before.
We have?
But this is a little different. So, I mean, we've done podcasts where I'm sitting in my boxer shorts on the deck in Gatlinburg, podcasting live after a game. So, we could have pulled the trigger there, but I think this new format is going to work better for us. Digest things. I get to look at the tape again, and we get to kind of put to bed what was a bitter taste, I think, for week one. A lot of anger, regardless of the situation. I feel like that's one you can't lose.
No.
Not just because of the opponent, but also because when you look at your schedule, you hate dropping one of those games that is very winnable. We're not going to say it's an easy schedule. There's no easy games out there. You still got to line up and play. And that we proved that on Friday night. You still got to go out there and execute. You still got to go out there and play the game the way it needs to be played. And there were a bunch of parts of that game where we didn't play it the way it needed to be played.
No, not at all. And let's start with the biggest part, and probably the biggest swinger of that game was on special teams. And literally maybe the ugliest effing long snap of all time that literally it felt like it went 35 yards and it leads to that ODU score. I mean,
it got snapped to Suffolk.
From Norfolk.
Yeah.
That's impressive. And that kind of proved to be the one of the stories that ODU needed us to screw up the score. And it started there, it was 7-3 right there. They get that, they go 7-10. And it was one of those, anytime you're the favorite, anytime you're considered the better team, there are plays like that happen. And as soon as it happens, it's like, that's a confidence grower for them. They took the lead. And, special teams just all night, besides that, obviously, I mean, a 54-yard loss in the net rushing. Don't let the rushing stats fool you. We did run the ball pretty well. But overall, take that into account. a bunch of holding, blocking the backs for 30-plus yards that really, really hurt some good returns by Keyshawn King and a really good punt return by DJ Harvey. So on the DJ Harvey, he was past the 40, and we start on behind the 15, and it's like we blew our feet off in that element of the game.
Yeah, that was almost a 30-yard penalty on the Harvey punt return.
Yes.
You had a good solid return, and then you have to back up 10 from the spot. So that hurt. Those other penalties hurt. And penalties was really the biggest part of this game, other than that big play in the snap and a couple interceptions by Grant Wells. But let's go ahead and pivot to the offense and Wells. Finished the game with 4 picks. When you look at the tape, I mean, not all on him, I'd say.
Take the Hail Mary out. Take the
Hail Mary out. You don't know who's to blame on that first one. There was definitely some miscommunication between what Wells thought Smith and or Gallo were going to do and what they actually did. But the other thing is the problem here is that there were two that were critical.
And bad.
One, you got press man on an out route. You shouldn't throw it. And if you're going to throw it, you definitely can't throw it inside.
Nope.
That got picked off. That's essentially 3 off the board there. You're in field goal range. Yep. And as long as you don't punt it into Suffolk or snap it into Suffolk, you probably get the 3 there.
3 there.
And then the other one, me and Curtis were talking about it when we were watching it in real time. And then when I watched it again, I kind of saw the same thing. That's a ball you just got to either throw in the dirt, or if you're going to take a risk there, take a calculated risk down the field where you're either burying them deep or you're getting the first down. There's no sense in throwing a 3-yard completion with a linebacker bearing down on your running back.
Nope.
And even then, probably had a little too much juice on it. Could Holston have done better and brought it in? Maybe, but that it shouldn't have been thrown. It shouldn't have been thrown.
That's a whole.
And if you're going to throw, even if you're going to throw that, you got to throw it sooner before the linebacker's on your running back.
It's one of those mental things where it's like you either eat it and throw it at Jalen Holston's feet, live another down, allow Peter Moore to punt it, and make them go hopefully 95 yards for a game-winning touchdown. But to your point, it's that. Okay, you've got to know down distance situation. It was 3rd down. It was more than 10, and you're throwing it 3 yards. Go downfield. You hit somebody downfield. The way they were throwing flags, it could have been a phantom PI call and essentially ends a game right there. And those are those 2 mistakes, which they were critical errors, because if you punt the ball again, they went 60 yards on their last drive. They did not have to drive extra. One of their field goals off of one of the turnovers, that was like, okay, like you're setting them up. The first turnover, they got it at midfield. They didn't move the ball, but they got us pinned deep again. So all the turnovers were just in critical areas of the field, which you can say, well, there's a critical error everywhere in the field. But the reality is, for us, it was they pinned us deep. Then short field for them, we took points off the board. It wasn't like it was one of those picks where it's like, this hurt nothing.
Yeah.
He threw a pick to the 15-yard line from their 45. Okay, it's a deep punt.
Well, I think by the time we got to the middle of the second quarter, just before the first pick, I think we kind of at that point knew, all right, this is probably going to be a game where points are at a premium as we're moving along. And the problem that we had is that we left points all over the field. I said it, I think I tweeted it. The grounds crew for ODU is going to still be picking up the points we left on the field by the time we recorded this, and they probably are. Between the Lofton catch down at the 3-yard line to set up at 1st and goal, that was offset by the OPI, which and it was a valid OPI. The problem is it had zero impact on the route. So not that it shouldn't have been flagged, but it's just completely unnecessary, both on our part and everything else. So that one hurts, because that's a play where it's a first down whether he commits the penalty or not. And then right after that, you miss on the retrial on 3rd down, and now all of a sudden you're again, snapping the ball into Suffolk.
Yeah.
We got to clean up the mistakes. The mistakes were the biggest part of the game. It impacted the game the most procedurally. I've never seen that many procedural penalties in a game. I'll say that until I watched Rutgers BC. There was a fuck ton of them in that game too. I want to say Rutgers was at like 8 penalties in the first half.
That's
8 or 9 penalties in the first half.
All right. Well, let me ask this: just from reviewing the tape, being at a collegiate level, is that something that can be cleaned up? And I'm not saying I'm expecting us to go from 115 yards of penalties, close to on the offensive side of the ball, almost 50 yards in procedural or 30 yards in procedural penalties. Is that something being cleaned up in 1 week, or is that a slow go?
I think there's some that can be cleaned up pretty quickly. I think the PIs are probably going to be the hardest thing to clean up. I'm talking about the defensive ones. When you look at the blocks in the back, I mean that's you watch film, you coach it. That should be an easy fix. When you talk about the offsides, that should be an easy fix. I don't know about the whole Dax calling the snap count thing because it was a silent count. So how do you call that? But that's neither here nor there. But things like that I think can be cleaned up. So if you ask me, like, 75% of that can be cleared up pretty quickly.
Okay.
The other 25% is going to take some time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's hope the 75 is really quick. All right, let's talk about offensively, kind of some bright spots. Let's talk about Keyshawn King, because that kid blew up over 100 yards, looked great on the the kick return, looked good in pass pro. Shout out Eric Carr out there today, showing. Did you see the block that he got into a GIF? He absolutely destroyed that linebacker coming on the GIF. And I think and we'll talk about the depth chart later. I'm going to go ahead and bring it up now. He's one on the depth chart. And when Malachi Thomas comes back from his injury, he should be 1D. And I'm not showing any disrespect to Jalen Holston. The guy obviously is a team player. He does all the right things. But when we looked Friday night, Keyshawn King broke a big 30-yarder, had over 100 yards. Chance Black came in and broke a 20-yarder.
Yep. And
Jalen, unfortunately, only had about 16 yards on 4 carries. And I know he was banged up. But it's one of those things where you get to a point, you love a guy doing everything right in practice, but if you put him in the game and it doesn't click, I think this is a coaching staff that will reward that. And we kind of already saw it when, Black got more carries and King really blew up.
Yeah, I mean, kudos to King for really sticking with it during the times. I'm sure there were times in the last 2 seasons where he was extremely frustrated with his role in this offense. And seeing him getting his opportunity and taking the most of it, that's big. So kudos to him. Liked what he was doing. There are areas of like maybe, here or there where he needed a little bit more vision or a little bit more patience, but I can't fault the kid. He ran hard. He ran well. He did good once he got to the second level, making guys miss and kind of finishing the run. And as you said with Holston, I mean, I get he's banged up and that's definitely, not practicing all week hurts, especially for week 1. But that being said, Holston's a guy that's been in this offense a lot and has had opportunities. At some point, unless we see something significantly different happen this week, I feel like he's a guy that has more of a minimal role for us going forward than a guy that's going to be kind of the bell cow. So that's just where I'm at right now at this point. We'll see if if he turns in some more opportunities this week against Boston College, where he's now number 2 on the depth chart.
Number 2 on the depth chart now, yeah. So that's going to be interesting to see because, again, we had a great day running the ball, especially Keyshawn King. Let's take a look at the tight end room. Nick Gallo, obviously, you said it since February. Tight ends are going to be featured a ton. Nick Gallo, 7 catches, 49 yards. Double D in there as well, 4 catches, 24 yards, so 11 catches combined. And I mean, I think you said it. And obviously, if these trends kind of hold up for the whole season, that room is going to have a lot of receptions, a fair amount of yards for both the 1 and 2, for the 1 and 2 tight ends. And I know we saw you pointed out to me a couple times. You saw some good blocks from them, but you also said it's something that they've still got to get better at.
Yeah, especially Gallo. I think Gallo is a guy that blocks really well out in space. He needs a lot of work with his inline blocking. And some of it's just understanding what his assignment is based on the alignment of the front. We saw a bunch of times where he was just going after the wrong man, chipping at the wrong area. Sometimes just flat getting beat. When he did have those kind of one-on-one opportunities with the defensive end. He's got to get better at that. And hopefully, with some extra practice in the system, at least he'll get those opportunities to at least get the scheme and the block right, because sometimes just getting there is good enough. Letting a guy go completely unblocked because you did the wrong thing is never a good thing.
Yeah. So the whole thing, hope he can clean up. But again, continuously, I think those are going to be mismatches. I'm sure you're hoping they bring your boy on. We did not see him Friday night, but I think as the season goes, as Brent Pry said in his presser today, we have to continue to create the depth. So
yeah, and I think you'll see more of him once he understands the offense. He's very much 4 or 5 weeks into this thing at this point. So
yep.
I think that's going to come with time. I think we saw Harrison St. Germain for a couple plays. I think he was out there a couple plays. But he had a spring. He probably has a little bit better grasp of the system. So if you're going to go into that 40, that's probably why he was getting a snap here or there. Especially since we didn't see Connor Blumberg very much until the Hail Mary started coming out there.
True. Going to be interesting to see that. Now, speaking of Brumlett, because when he ran those routes, that was out of the wide receiver position, and that room's hurting right now. Obviously, Caleb Smith got hurt during the game after having a big catch early, having 45 yards in the quarter that he played. Clearly, he was going to be a big part of the game. Pry said it today, he's day-to-day. He is listed on the depth chart. I don't know if that's for show. We never got any information about what his injury was, so I want to see how that goes. But, Dwayne Lofton had a couple good moments. Stephen Gosnell had a couple good moments. But that room overall is hurting. And if Caleb can't go for a couple weeks, really this week more than next week, I mean, that's going to hurt that room, and where you're probably going to have to see Connor Blumberg.
Yeah, and the question is going to be is, if you don't want to rush Caleb back, but at the same time, if he's good, you want him to go.
Mm-hmm.
If he's not good, you probably want to hold him off and maybe even hold him off against Wofford before you, welcome the Mountaineers into town on Thursday night. So that's kind of where I'm at with him. I'm hoping that he's going to be good to go this week. I think getting more game reps with Wells is going to be a good thing. So I want him to get out there as much as he can, but obviously I don't want to rush a guy back that has one of those soft tissue injuries or something related to an ankle or something like that. Take the time you need, get right, because we're going to need you more in October than we need you in September.
That's very, very true. All right, let's flip out of that room. Let's look at the offensive line. And, sir, I'll give you what is Seed's grades for the offensive line: run, pass, and the cumulative.
For rushing grade, I give it a C+. I saw some good things.
Oh, wait a second. We went over 200 yards, and your eyes say we're just slightly above average for that.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is that there were problems across the board that kept rearing their ugly head throughout the game.
Okay.
I'll say a couple things. So, and I'm going to get to this in a second, but Parker Clements did not have a good game across the board. I thought Johnny Jordan could have been better in the run game. I would like to see him him play better in the run game. Not bad. Not a lot of negative plays, but I didn't see a lot of dominance out of him. He should have been able to kind of wreck in there. So that was disappointing. As far as pass pro, D-, and I know you say, okay, we didn't give up, sacks, but there were moments where Wells was getting hit as he let go of the ball. Obviously on the big play to Caleb, he got freaking clobbered as he let the ball go, and that was a dime. But he got on the interception. He had pressure in his face coming from the right side. The first interception, and so he was getting pressured all night. I'd like to see him maybe, speaking of Wells, step up and maybe try to take off a little bit more as those extra pressure is coming in. But the tackles did not play very well in pass pro. So a D- grade overall for them in pass pro. And cumulative grade, I'm going to go D+. I could go C-, D+, but I'm going to go D+ in this case. The negative plays I saw were impactful. And I'm going to call out one person right off. Again, I've already said his name. I'm going to call out Parker
Sieg's
Clements.
Doghouse. Sieg's Doghouse is Parker Clements, everybody.
Yeah. Parker's in the doghouse this week. I need to see better play across the board from him next week. And he's shown he can do that. So that's why this was such a disappointing performance. Because he showed at times last year he can be depended on at right tackle, but he had like 4 or 5 Olay blocks. We call them lookout blocks, or the guy runs past, you just turn around and yell lookout to the quarterback. We had a few of those. Just looked not as polished, almost like he was thinking too much in the run game. And I'm gonna give somebody else a little bit of a shout out, but I'm also gonna say a few things about him.
Go on.
Jesse Hansen didn't have an awful game, but Jesse Hansen is slow as shit with his pulls.
That's not a good thing for a Wisconsin-based running attack that we're going to.
He's got to get faster with those.
Well, I don't think I think that might be an issue. I think he is what he is. I mean, but if he's more consistent in the straight ahead and then the pass pro, how much do you get out of young Moore? All right, Dwight Vick chiming in. Don't understand why they don't bring a defensive guy over for some offense. I think it's depth right now, Dwight, because I think the guy I would look to bring over would be like DJ Harvey, and he's literally your top nickel corner, your top punt returner, and he's your number 2 corner behind Dorian Strong. So if you put him over the offense and he gets banged up, you're losing a guy at threefold.
So you're saying in the 2000s, yeah, you had Macho and D Hall playing both sides, but you had some dogs behind them too.
You were deep behind them. We were deep behind them in those days. So again, if the depth is built next year, maybe we can do that, but I don't see that right now. But let's flip it over. Let's talk about the defense for a few minutes since Dwight brought up moving a player over. I mean, the defense to me played very well all night. Under 250 total yards for ODU. The defense itself only gave up 13 points, which really impressive that you kind of see that. Now, are there some things we need to get home with? Yeah, we only had 1 sack. We were there a lot. We only came home once. I know that's a big something you were kind of watching, that we were one step short multiple times. What could have either been a sack or at least affecting Hayden throwing the ball.
Yep. Yeah, I would like to see us get home at least 2 more times. And there was, like I said, a couple times we were there close. We still ended up, again, 1 sack. We had 2 forced fumbles, 7 tackles for loss. But the thing that was mind-numbing is that, we still are missing those tackles in the backfield where you got a quarterback or running back dead to rights, and somehow they slip by you and get either a solid gain, scamper for a first down, something like that. We got to stop those, because those are the ones that extend those drives and end up costing you points. we had Blake Watson dead to rights in the backfield on that fourth down play,
and he got out,
and somehow he squirted through. That was tough one. That was tough to watch.
That's something we've seen the last few years is just not cleaned up, and I hope we would see it better. Now, I will say this, my lining on that, at least nothing – they may have broke out of the backfield, but nothing went for any more. I think maybe 4 yards was the longest, where it felt like the last 3 to 4 years it had been if they broke out of that, it was just a lot of air in front of them for 10, 15-yard gains. That's my feel on it. Now, the other one, you mentioned it a few minutes ago, were the penalties. 3 penalties on defense. 4 penalties, counting the DAX, which we're still trying to figure out that rule. But the other 3 were for 30 yards, all PI. The biggest one, though, was the one that wasn't a PI. And that was the ball. It was a key 4th and 2. They go shot on the left side of the field. The ball went 10 yards over bound. As soon as it was thrown, you could see it hit the white mark on the outside of the ODU sideline. The white mark is essentially the box the coaches can go into, correct? And it's that white, or they can't go into that.
Yeah.
It hit on the outside of that. Funny story. Me and Brian are screaming at the television. My wife walks in and be like, the kids are asleep. I'm going to close the door now. We're like, oh, yeah, sorry, hon.
We got a little rambunctious there.
Yeah, it's okay. It's us.
I mean,
that was that let them get downfield and get 3 points.
Yeah, and the thing you hate about it is that, I mean, by the letter of the law, PI was committed, but the ball was not a catchable ball, and that's where. And the problem is, I feel like that rule doesn't get applied very often at all. Nowhere near enough. I mean,
nowhere near enough.
You define catchable. These guys aren't Stretch Armstrong. They're not out there, with detachable limbs and all this other stuff making plays. So it's frustrating. But those are penalties that I feel like if we didn't have all the other stuff, I'd live with those.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because especially considering how much we were bringing pressure and things like that, and how much these guys were in kind of man or de facto man looks in the secondary. 100%. I'm okay. I'll be okay with that. 3 or 4 PIs a game. I'm not gonna be that angry with, especially if it's ones where, are either questionable, like the one we're talking about that was out of bounds, or stopped a play that could have been even bigger. I'd much rather take the PI than take a 50, 60-yard gain.
Very true on that. A lot of other weird stuff, sort of aftermath. Obviously, the one everybody knew about in the middle of the game was the coaches getting stuck on the elevator from down in the locker room up. I've never heard of anything like that in my life. How does that happen? A pretty new facility down there, and it was Pearson, and it was Sean Quinn. They got caught in there along with some of the analysts because the first person you saw come back was Pearson. Obviously, that was the thing. And then the Blumrick and the fan rushing the field incident, which he made an apology. And after today, it does not appear that he will face any sort of suspension. It's really funny. You know who Andrew Friedman is here in Richmond, right? Weather guy. He's a UVA grad. And he put this big tweet out like, I see nothing wrong with what he did. Like, guys running at the field, you don't know what's going on. Like, they're taking their lives into their own hand and rushing the field, right?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't see anything egregious. He saw a guy running at him. He lowered his shoulder a little bit and, made contact. Guy fell down. It is what it is. It's not something that we should be making more. I mean, the apology's fine. I don't think it was necessarily necessary, but if you make the apology, that should be the only thing that we need to do, and then you just keep it moving.
Yeah. So as bad as those two things were, the shittiest part was what happened during the game to our players' locker room, with some they're saying between, I've heard 8, I've heard 10, I've heard $20,000 in items stolen. And when you, as soon as you hear that, these are our players and our coaches' personal belongings. You know it is. It's probably guys' chains. It's probably guys' watches, their iPhones, whatever they carry with them.
Yep.
And ODU's wonderful security just lets guys dress up as janitors and just go on in there. If nothing else, they want to keep this series. Every game should be in Blacksburg because clearly.
I mean, people are talking about canceling the series over this, and I'm not with that. And I'll tell you one thing. The biggest reason why for me is that at this point, it's a pride thing.
Okay.
If you cancel the series after losing back-to-back games in their house, it looks like you're running away from a fight. And okay. I don't think we can pull that. Whether it's something that Witt wants to entertain or not, I wouldn't have it at this point because that's the way I would perceive it. I would perceive like, okay, and that's the way a lot of people perceive. Oh, you guys are ducking playing in Norfolk now.
Oh yeah, it's true. It's true. Now, if we go back and like $70,000 gets stolen from the locker room, and you take the W home.
Yeah, if we go down there and beat them by 4 touchdowns and shit still gets stolen, okay, let's have a conversation then. But you can't go down there and lose by 3 to a G5 team and then be like, yeah, I think we're going to cancel this series because there was theft. Can't do that.
All right. So there we go. Let's shut the book. Let's close it. ODU over. We start BC week this week. But before that, we obviously got some news, and obviously some of the bigger breaking news today, Brian, from Virginia Tech. My son Kelly out of D.W. Daniel High School in Central South Carolina, just north of Clemson, a 3-star cornerback commits to the Hokies. I don't know if that was late in the day. I don't know if you got a chance to take a look at his tape yet.
I haven't had a chance to look at the tape. I have done a little bit of research on the kid. I mean, I know Louisville was pressing hard for him. I think Oklahoma had given him an invite. He was supposed to be down there this weekend. He canceled that to commit to Virginia Tech. So that's a big move. It's not a player that necessarily blows your skirt up in terms of accolades and big 4-star, 5-star type player, but it's another solid player that we're adding, and I think it's the type of player that fits what Virginia Tech is trying to do on defense.
Yep, and it's another player from that 5-hour radius, northern part, just south of Charlotte there. So obviously he's in the radius that we're continuing to pummel pretty hard. With the kid committing, it does take us, we're around 39 in the overall rankings. And I haven't looked at that a lot recently. Obviously, the season gets kicked off. We're sort of focused in on this. A few teams above us have more commits than we do, so there are a couple chances that we could potentially jump back up into that 35 range. I know that's kind of Brian's eye this year as long as we get to it, so it'll be interesting how that plays out. All right, Brian, let's go to some other news and notes from the world of college football. And let's start with the portal decision that came out just a couple weeks ago, basically saying that now there will be 2 windows for portal transfers. The first window will be 45 days, essentially after the playoffs are announced, so roughly early December to mid-January. And then the other is going to be a 15-day period from May 1st to May 15th. This is effectively, if you look, there are some spring games that are on the 27th, 28th, sometimes even the 30th. This is roughly the after spring ball period. What do you like? What don't you like?
What I like is the 45 days after the playoffs. It gives you enough time for players to evaluate their circumstances, evaluate what's out there, decide that the portal's for them, put themselves out there. It also, once you're wrapping up that period, it still gives you some time as a coach to look at what's left and kind of fill in some holes that the portal created, whether you're grabbing guys from the portal, whether you're closing out a class before the second signing day there. So I like that aspect of it. I wish that the May period was maybe a little bit longer.
Full month?
At least another week. Yeah. I mean, I'd say go at least 25 days is what I would go there. But I'd be okay with a full month. So that's a little short to me, but I feel like it's probably enough time, but I would have rather had maybe, like I said, at least another week or so, to kind of really flesh that out. But, this is a lot better than what we're dealing with now. It allows coaches to plan their roster building a lot better. And now you got a situation where, guys, once they make the decision in May,
you're in.
They're buckling up for the upcoming season.
You're buckling up. You're trying to get yourself on the field with tape before potentially announcing in December. Again, we've been mentioning that it needs to be some control to this. It's good the players have this ability to transfer essentially when they want to or wherever they want to. But now the win is the big part, because what you don't want is, obviously, you think about when roughly that first period ends. It's going to probably be right after the national championship, 3 weeks before National Signing Day. So your point already, if you like a kid and maybe one of the underclassmen leaves the room, you can take his spot there. But also think about the implication when it comes to the winter workouts. About you've got those staffs putting an enormous amount of time. And I know a lot of that's team, but it's how they individually start focusing on kids, right, at that point in time. If you've got 5 kids who don't want to be there, then they can essentially be gone, and obviously more time for the other kids. I like the other piece, and you mentioned it, and we talked about it this afternoon when we chatted. You now have coaches, once May 16th hit, this is our roster. Where are our deficiencies? Where are our strengths? We're not waiting on potentially some guy in July to commit to us. This is our team. So as far as strategic planning goes, lots easier. Also, think about those camps we've talked about. And kids going to be committing the next cycle. You know what your team's looking like. Can people leave the next year? Yeah, but the whole thing is, this is what we look like right now. Where are we going to need help? So it's really helpful for not only the Hokies, but all schools strategically to decide how they want to recruit and how the game plans are going to look come the fall.
Yeah, I think it's going to help the portal players too, because I think with having the window, guys won't be kind of lost in the sauce, right? I think a lot of guys put their names out there not in those times of year where everyone's focused on there. So if you're not a big name with your name out there in the portal, sometimes that's going to get lost. But now you got everybody putting their names in within these certain periods. It's a lot easier to have a guy that, okay, well, I saw his name hit the portal. Let's see what he's about. Let's get some tape on him. Let's see how he practiced. Let's see if he got any games last year.
Absolutely. So good thing overall for the sport. Good thing overall for everybody. But then there was something better that is, in our opinions, better overall for the sport long term, and that is the CFP essentially approved a 12-team playoff. Something, obviously, we have had an episode. Brian gave his diatribe out back last winter. And believe it or not, there are some things that Brian discussed that it's like they listen. The first one, I think me and you talked today, the best one was the first essentially 6 will be the highest 6 ranked conference champions, and then the next 6 highest ranked teams. Now, the big part of that is you have to be a conference champion to get a top 4 seed. Yep. I know we both love that.
That's the one I like.
That's the one I think everybody should love it, because it's like you've actually got to do something on the field against a significantly good foe to earn something, not just be given a top seed.
Yep. I think that's the big thing is that, these conferences exist for a reason. You're playing the extra game for a reason. That's got to matter. And it hasn't mattered for a long time. I think gone are the days of that, one or two loss Alabama team being in the top 4, because they're not going to be that team that played the extra game. I mean, you could apply the same logic to a Georgia or to an Ohio State that lost to a Penn State or a Wisconsin. If you don't play for and win your conference championship, you're not going to be there. So that matters again. Now you can still make the playoff, but you will not be in that top 4 seed. And that gives everybody a shot, because if you win your conference, you're in the playoff.
You very well could be potentially in the playoff. As long as you're, hate to say this, that year Pitt went 6-6. I don't think they would have made it in that year. But if you're somewhere between a 9 and a 10 win team, you're in the Power 5, you're likely going to be higher than some G5. I think this also sets a precedent that there is going to be a G5 school in every year. Without a doubt, you start going back and looking through the times, always at least one. Now, the other one, this is the one that's kind of got me jacked. So 1 through 4 gets a bye. Those are 4 conference championships. The next 8 teams will be playing games, and they will be at the higher seeds, either home field or a designated site determined by the higher seed. I love that because I'm just waiting for the day a typically team that plays in sunshine in 75 degrees has to go to a place like Madison or Ann Arbor or places like that where it's like, so what's the temperature going to be? -6.
Yep.
And it's going to be a foot of snow on the ground.
I'll tell you what I'm looking forward to. I'm looking forward to potential App State hosting one of those games.
Oh, App State hosting one of those games? Well, let's just throw it back here. Think of that Marshall game back in 2019 that we had to play. Or 2018, excuse me.
2018, yeah.
When it was like 31, it was yucky, it was foggy. Those are some of the best games because it's like you can't out-scheme someone. It literally is going to be a physical game. And I think seeing some of these potential venues, you take a look and you kind of think about last year, seeing some of those venues on that stage, right?
Yep.
Seeing those venues on that stage for a super meaningful game. Now we'll shout out somebody, and we're going to probably get into this at some point in the off season. And people continue to say they do not think it changes recruiting. Shout out John Earl out there who, me and him, he put together some data for me about how much top 300 talent goes to certain schools. People continue to say, well, it's not going to change. It's not going to change. How can that be so? How do you think it's not going to change if teams are getting to different levels of success? We saw that with the Hokies, right? The Hokies were a team that recruited in the 30s, got good, started recruiting in the 20s, and then the teens. We see this with so many. So every time I see someone, well, it's not going to change the way recruiting works. Yeah, it is. A couple of the other things, obviously, it's going to be shaping up. There'll be 4 quarterfinal bowl games, and then obviously the semis and then the finals. Again, I think overall, it's to me, it makes everything for the sport significantly better because some people say, some games just won't matter, and unless it's the playoff. I can't remember who said it. I think it was Desmond Howard. He literally just said this: you're going to give 20 to 25 teams hope at the end of October.
Yep.
Hope. And hope's a dangerous thing.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of us are still coming off the hopium, man. We're still detoxing after, getting ready for it. And then we have one loss to open the year. But yeah, so we talk about hope. We talk about, you get into October, you still got something to play for, and not just your conference championship, but you got a chance to play in the playoff, and play in a big game, potentially host a big game in the playoff. That's going to boost recruiting. You can't say it won't boost recruiting. There's going to be trickle down to these schools.
It will be.
I'm not saying it's going to be significant. I don't think all of a sudden if what's a school that's like kind of in that top 25?
Well, it used to be us, but if we're being realistic here, I I don't know, man. I mean,
Iowa State. I don't
yeah,
think
there you
Iowa
go.
State. I don't think Iowa State's gonna all of a sudden start recruiting like Alabama.
No,
But I think there could be a boost with that national brand getting even more prominent.
being on TV and then seeing the whole thing is it's the eyes. It's the more eyes on you. Are there going to be some absolute destruction games? Yes, there is. But that's every week in college football.
Yep.
We've been on the and the Hokies in the last 10 years have been on the wrong side of some, but we've been on the right side of some just dog stomping competition. So that happens even when two teams are fairly decently matched up. So I don't want to hear this. Oh, but what about the ass whippings? Well, ass whippings happen all over. Well, here's the thing. Last year, the Bills and Patriots just shouldn't have played that game, Brian. The Bills were so much better than the Patriots. They shouldn't have played that game. And the Bills beat the shit out of them. But they played the game, right? You play the game. You give someone a chance. Because who's not to say that the best player on your team doesn't get hurt in the first quarter, he doesn't come back. And even teams like Georgia, like Alabama, like Ohio State, there are certain players they lose on their teams. You know as well as I do, those teams are not the same.
It's true. It's true, man.
So overall, 12-team playoff. They're saying 2026. I'm going to be straight up with you. Talk with my cousin. I think ESPN is going to fast track it to 24.
Well, I think they see what the ratings are doing for the non-college football playoff games, and they're like, all right, well, if we have these games, they're gonna draw more ratings than the current bowl games are that aren't affiliated with the college playoffs. So let's add those in. Let's get a couple extra games in December that matter.
Yes.
In these home environments. And I mean, hell, they could still do like a college game day for those if they wanted to.
Oh, they undoubtedly would. You'd undoubtedly would go to the biggest one. Heck, if you're, and the honest truth is, you might send different people to every location for that game. So
it'd be interesting to see what they do.
Oh, yeah. All right. So before we get into the main topic tonight about knowing the enemy, looking at BC, we are going to take a quick pause from our commercial sponsors.
As we take a quick break, we'd like to tell you about getting your free website report from our digital partner, Grassroots Digital Marketing Studio. They'll tell you how your website ranks on Google, on-site SEO, and social media. No commitment to buy anything. You can get your free report by visiting grassrootsdigitalstudio.com/free-website-report. Now back to the episode.
All right, Brian. So now some of our favorite time of the week, and that's know the enemy. Let's take a look at BC, and let's start on the defensive side of the ball. Let's take a look at Cam Arnold, the linebacker, number 5, 6'1", 227 pounds. He was a 3-star out of the 2020 class from Orchard Lake, Michigan. What are we seeing on the Cam Arnold tape?
Well, Cam Arnold is a former safety, so he's got pretty good speed. This is his first year starting at linebacker. They kind of converted him this offseason. They had him there in the spring, and he earned the starting role coming into the season. What I'm seeing is he's really good at pursuit, which you would expect from a safety, right? But he's still working on shedding blockers in the box, but he does make plays. He flies around, and he's pretty good in coverage, as you would expect from a safety that's kind of moved into the box there. He does a good job of coverage when he's out there on a running back and isolated.
Where are we seeing him primary lineup? Is he playing well, or is he playing a little bit more on the outside?
So he would be in the 4-2-5, in the Bud Foster 4-2-5. He would have been a backer.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Solid game up against Rutgers. Had 5 tackles. And last year in a primary backup role, 60-plus tackles, 3.5 for loss, and a sack. So obviously a young guy who is finding his or coming into his own quickly in this Hafley defensive scheme. Now, I know another guy you said that popped off at the tape while you were watching that game on Saturday afternoon. By the way, Brian watched Rutgers BC
Twice.
You deserve like a scotch or something. You deserve a drink for that. But let's talk about Vinny DePalma. What are you seeing out of Vinny DePalma?
He's more of a traditional inside backer, kind of that prototypical Mike type player. He does really well in the blocks, inside the box as a tackler. Sure at getting guys to the ground. Probably one of the better in terms of just pure mechanics and tackling that you'll see on that defense. They don't really use him as a blitzer, and they don't really rely on him a lot in coverage. And he's not on the field when there's an obvious pass situation. So when they go nickel, when they sub, they're pulling him off the field pretty regularly.
Yeah, and I'm seeing Bryce Steele's name a lot when they come to doing that. Obviously, DePalma, a linebacker, 6'1", about 225, was a 2018 three-star commitment to the Eagles. Obviously, this is his COVID year.
Yep.
If I'm not mistaken, this is his COVID year. He should have been gone last year. Solid season last year with 53 tackles, a few tackles for loss. So I think the one thing is he had 9 tackles against Rutgers. We're going to see his name a lot regardless. My hope is it's further upfield than at the line of scrimmage. But when he's in there, that's kind of his job, right?
Yeah, he's that guy that's kind of cleaning up in the middle there. Obviously, we hope that it's going to be more of that, 5-6 yards downfield before that contact's made instead of at the line of scrimmage.
Absolutely. All right, so let's flip from the linebacking core and let's take a look at the defensive back room because they do have some pretty good players there. And let's start with a pretty highly touted guy that came to BC via transfer from Florida State, and that's Jaden Woodby, a 6 foot tall, 222-pound defensive back safety out of Fontana, California at the perennial power St. John Bosco out there. A top 50 player, a top 10 safety in the country, a 4-star when he first came out. What are they using him as now? Obviously, for him to get that Halfley experience with a guy who coached in the NFL, potential chance to land in the NFL if his play warrants it this year.
Yeah, and he's kind of playing that nickel whip type role. Definitely, as we've seen in the more modern version of this defense, more of a nickel type position with heavy coverage responsibilities. They like to match him up against the tight end in the slot, and he does really good in that role. He's good in coverage, especially in man coverage. But he's also really good at coming down and filling against the rush. So he kind of cleans up that spill area there pretty good as well. So he's definitely, I'd say, the best overall defender on that defense, just because of how balanced he is and how much he can impact in the passing game and in the run game.
And I'm assuming too, with his body type and athleticism, that lends itself to do a lot of things all over the field.
Yeah, they'll use him a lot of different ways. He'll blitz. They don't blitz a ton, but when they do, he's one of the primary guys that's blitzing. And like I said, they like him in coverage, and they like him to kind of clean up the spill area and kind of press that edge.
All right, so remember the name Jaden Woodby. Not a huge popping game against Rutgers, just 5 tackles, 1 for loss. So we'll see how it goes. Now let's take a look at probably what you told me is their best corner. Elijah Jones, a 6'2" cornerback from Harlem, New York, played at Cardinal Hayes High School, a 3-star recruit in the 2018 class. What's Elijah Jones showing you, Brian?
He's their best coverage corner. Kind of a good balance of all 3 kind of disciplines there. Good in man, above average press, above average zone. They usually match him up consistently against the best receiver on the other team. They try to, at least. So we're probably going to have to scheme some guys away from him to get some additional spacing in the passing game.
He had a pick against Rutgers, took it back almost 40 yards. Consistently, it looks like he's always been a good tackler, 25-plus tackles every season he's played. All right. Does it worry you if Caleb can't go? Does it worry you that he would probably be matched up with probably Lofton, or do you think someone else?
It depends on what we decide to do with Connor Blumrick. As weird as that sounds.
Yeah, that does sound weird. That does sound weird.
I think if we don't have Caleb, I think mixing in Connor is probably the best plan B, just because size and athleticism, he's the closest approximation to Caleb. So he could probably do some of that and fill that role a little bit. I don't think he's as dynamic as Caleb is. I think Caleb now is probably our best overall receiver on the roster right now. So, but there's some potential there to get Blumrick some extra touches, and it might be something that happens. It might not. I do hope to see Blumrick out there on the field more than we saw him this past week, because I feel like he does create some mismatch problems.
Well, let's just, this is kind of flipping Hokies. That sideline pass where he actually made the catch, he was out of bounds, but that catch in itself was impressive. And it's one. Well,
he would have been inbounds if the safety didn't come and knock him out.
Oh yeah, the safety pushed him. I mean, if nothing else, he's a big body, and he got some speed. Just send him downfield. Can I ask this though? And we talked about it a little earlier. I want you to kind of explain. If they decide to match him up on Lofton, obviously he's got a significant size, weight advantage on Dwayne Lofton. What can we do to get Dwayne free? Because we did see Dwayne with some wiggle with a couple good catches last week.
Yeah, I think we'd probably move him in motion a little bit more to try to get some spacing at the snap. I think you try to scheme him open some more. We saw a play last week where we had two posts to one side off of play action, then we ran a crosser from the other side underneath that. Had to clear out. The play action worked on the sucking the linebackers in. Stuff like that might give him a little bit more room to operate. We might see some other techniques to get him open. Like I said, I think the biggest thing is going to be getting him in motion where they're not able to get in his face at the snap.
All right, good to know. All right, let's talk about last player. Let's look at the defensive line. And Donovan Izaraku. I did not go to the pronunciation guide on that one. Let me see if I change my find it. No, I can't. Either way.
Izuruaku is my guess.
Izuruaku. All right.
I didn't hear it enough on the PA during the game to tell you exactly what it is.
All right. Well, either way, he's number 6. Keep an eye on him. Huge game against Rutgers. 8 solo tackles, 2 tackles for loss, a sack. He forced 2 fumbles. He was everywhere. He's 6'2", he's 236, so definitely a little undersized defensive end. Williamstown, New Jersey, and a freshman or a freshman last year, sophomore this year, so a relatively young player when he was a 3-star. What's it say? What's the tape and what you see with him versus Rutgers?
He pops out on tape. He kind of reminds me of Barno Light. Just looking at him. They use him a lot in the 2-point stance coming off the edge, just like we did in 2021 with Barno. He has good speed coming off the edge. He disrupts. He has shocking amount of strength given his size and youth at this point. And he uses that strength to his advantage. So probably a little bit stronger against the rush. But it's still a guy that you could potentially run at in order to negate some of that speed rush off the edge.
All right. And the way we, again, looked running the ball, it might be the way to go. You mentioned kind of various pieces throughout talking about each of these players. Let's just get high level on their scheme.
Yeah, no, I talked about it. It's a 4-2-5. It's very, very familiar system in terms of the scheme. But they're less aggressive with blitzing. It's more akin to the J-Ham model than it would be the Bud Foster model. Okay. They don't blitz a ton. They rely on their pursuit in the run game and getting pressure with 4 in the pass game. So they're comfortable setting back and they're comfortable playing various coverages, and they don't bring a ton of pressure.
All right, so I guess that a lot goes into Hafley being an NFL guy with his roots, right? Because you don't see as many aggressive schemes in the NFL. It's a lot more rush for, play zone, or various schemes. Some zone, some man.
Yep.
How do you think we can attack this?
I mean, the big thing is that kind of force them to over pursue, fool them with misdirection. That would be the primary way I would attack them is try to get them pursuing one way and attack them the other. They do push hard when they're attacking in the run game and in the short passing game. Okay. They will get to the spot. So if we can get their eyes tricked, I think that's the best way to go about it.
All right. Well, let's flip over to the offense, take a look at that. And obviously, we're going to talk about Phil Dracovic first, the 6'5", now 214 pounds, took a little weight off of it from last year. If you remember him, Gibsonia, outskirts of Pittsburgh, 4-star in the 2018 class, was a top 5 quarterback, top 100 player. Originally went to Notre Dame, came to BC in the 2020 portal. He is currently 1-1 versus the Hokies in his career. And is there anything different popping this year compared to when you had a review for him a couple years ago? Because obviously we didn't play him last year. Oh, we did play him last year. He just he was a game time decision.
Yeah, we were preparing for a couple different options last year, so we didn't necessarily focus as heavily on Dracovic just because he was somebody that we were familiar with from previous season. I'd say the big thing is the weight loss. He's still a big guy, but he's got enough wiggle and speed to break the pocket when necessary. We've seen it before. He's got a big and mostly accurate arm. He can get the ball downfield. He can throw on the run pretty well. Sometimes throws the ball a little too flat on those intermediate routes. So we got opportunities there to pick them off. They're a little bit harder to catch, so we might be able to, as long as our corners have good angles, there might be some that are hard to catch there. But the big thing is that he does take risk with his body by staying in the pocket too long and taking unnecessary hits when he's scrambling. So that's going to be the opportunity to, fluster him, get him off his game. Rutgers did a good job in that game as it went on, getting after Dracovic and kind of taking him a little bit out of his game because they were somewhat dealing early on in that game, especially the connection between him and the guy we're going to talk about in a couple minutes. And as things wore on, Rutgers kind of started hitting him, and it wasn't going quite the way they wanted to anymore. So that's going to be, I think, the biggest thing that we can do to attack him. He will make a mistake with the football when he tries to do too much. So we got to do better than we did this past Friday night. And when those balls are hitting our DBs in the hands, we got to bring that in.
Yep, I was going to ask about that because, he threw 3 touchdowns. He threw almost 300 yards, under 60% completion percentage, but he threw the 2 picks. Were they because he got hit, forcing, or what did it look like with the 2 picks when you watched the tape?
It was a mix of everything.
Okay.
The first one looked like he was more just rushed the ball out, wasn't where it needed to be. One of the, I think it was either a backer or a nickel was playing for Rutgers, was playing kind of that deep flat, and he kind of saw where Phil was going with it and sank back and picked it off. The second was more of a, pocket was collapsing type deal.
All right, so one of those, essentially something we saw a couple times, bad decisions being made. Let's hope that he makes more versus the Hokies. Now, let's be realistic here. It is Boston College, so they always seem to run the ball. And with Pat Garlow, what's he looking like this year? The 5'8", 208 from Levittown, PA, a top 10 player, NPA in 2019, a 3-star. What's he looking like this year?
Yeah, the first game is kind of hard to tell. He looks like he has a little bit more juice in his legs. He did lose a little bit of weight in the offseason, just like Jerkovic did. It looks like his ability to bounce out and get to the edge is a little bit better than it was in years past. But he's still a patient runner and mostly between the tackles. Not really elite speed, especially he's not going to break a big one if he gets to the second level, unless there's kind of clear sailing ahead of him. And he's not really used a ton in the passing game. That's definitely not his strength, but they will occasionally throw the ball to him here or there when they need to. But he had probably one of his worst games against Rutgers, and it was one that actually started pretty well. Most of the yards that he got was in the first quarter and a half.
Oh, wow. I mean, he only had 25. He was under 2 a carry against Rutgers. And, I mean, this is a guy who last year, 1,000 yards rushing, over 5 a carry, 7 touchdowns. Obviously, he's not a big pass catcher because he kind of is what he is. But I think we're going to get into why potentially he is struggling a little bit more this year. But let's talk about the one guy on offense that we cannot let him beat us, and that's Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers every year just seems like he's there catching balls, making plays. 22 touchdowns now in his 4-year career there. He was a 3-star. He is a Florida kid from down in Fort Lauderdale in 2019. And I mean, 117 yards with those 2 touchdowns on Saturday, man. He had a game that's pretty big.
Yeah, he's a dangerous deep threat. He's also that home run hitter on that short stuff. So he has a big yards after the catch game, along with being a deep threat that can burn you deep downfield. So got to make sure we're not allowing home runs to him. Don't let him beat you with one play. He also plays the ball well on back shoulder throws, which we saw hurt us against ODU a couple times. So we got to be cognizant of that. When he's in those deep routes, he's going to come back, try to make a play on the ball if it's underthrown, and does a really good job with that. He had the first touchdown that he caught was kind of an incredible kind of comeback back shoulder where, I don't know how the ball got in there, but it did, and he was able to make the play on it. And he's also a big-time threat in their return game, so we got to do good on special teams containing him there as well.
Yeah, so, again, we have that one guy on the outside that can beat us, and, we cannot let it happen because, in their first couple games this year, it was Zay and then the next guy we're going to talk about. No one else had any more than 2 catches against Rutgers other than Zay Flowers and George Takis, the number 80 tight end, 6'6", 247 pound out of Naples. 4-star when he came out in 2018. Again, went to the Irish, then transferred to BC. I feel like BC has their portal school already set up when it doesn't work out there. Just this week, 7 catches, 84 yards. I feel like between Flowers and Takis, we're looking at the same 2 guys again, just like we did at ODU.
Yeah, I feel like Boston College is becoming like the relegation school for the Irish. Anybody that's not consistently starting or transfers out of Notre Dame is heading over to the other Catholic school there in Boston. But I mean, he's had back-to-back games. We've now had big athletic tight ends that we're dealing with, and Takis had a good game against Rutgers. They like to use him up the seam on kind of the shallow crossers and those quick outs. And where he's going to hurt us probably the most is up the seam. So that's the one we got to be cognizant of. And he's primarily used as the secondary read within the offense. He's not the primary very often. We'll hit him on a couple routes where he's the first look, but usually he's the secondary read within the game plan.
What about blocking? Do we need to worry about him on the line? He does have good size, obviously, or is it not in his game?
He blocks well. It's not his strong suit, but it's not a liability either.
All right. So there they are. And now, Brian, let's talk about where their biggest issue is, and it's something that I think probably shocked you a little bit as you were looking at it, and that is the offensive line. I mean, obviously, this week running the ball, they barely broke 40 yards. They had a total of, actually, they didn't even break 30 yards, 29 yards on 28 carries. Not good at all. What is it showing? What is that line showing now?
Yeah, and some of that's negative yardage on some sacks, but it still was a pretty garbage performance by the offensive line and the running game as a whole. This is not offensive line U this year, guys. We're not looking at your typical Boston College offensive line. They are pretty much all young and inexperienced after the ACL injury to Christian Mahogany this offseason. That really put them behind the eight ball. They had one returning seasoned veteran, and then you lose him too. Right now, they're looking like, in terms of guys with experience, Ozzie Trapillo, who's class of 2020, he started a couple games as a 4-star prospect out of high school. He's really the best linchpin they have in terms of, I think he's had 2 starts in his career before Rutgers. So the run blocking wasn't bad, but it was so inconsistent that they couldn't really consistently get to the second level, and BC felt like they needed to abandon that because it just wasn't getting them ahead of the sticks. And when they went to pass pro, it was even worse. When they were early in the game, when things were a little more balanced, Jurkovec had some time. Once they kind of went full pass and Rutgers was pinning their ears back, Jurkovec was getting crushed.
All right, so obviously issues there, and they had a change up in scheme this year because I can remember Frank Signetti left them, went over to Pitt, and now they're looking at John McNulty's last stop was a tight end coach over at Notre Dame. So what are you seeing? Does it make sense that he was a tight end coach based on what you're seeing?
Yeah, they run multiple, a lot of 11 and 12 personnel, pretty heavy 12 to start the game. It went more 11 as things went on. About a 60-40 pass to run is what they would like to be at. Obviously, Rutgers kind of took them out of their game plan by the middle of the second quarter in that game, and it was very much a one-dimensional offense. Which, if we can do that, I think that's probably our best case. Essentially, make them one-dimensional and make sure Zay Flowers doesn't beat us with one play. But yeah, the offensive line is definitely their weakness, and it's gonna hinder the heights that they could potentially reach because they're not going to be effective enough consistently in the run game. And that's going to mean that Jurkovec's going to be dropping back 35 plus times a game, trying to win it with his arm and hopefully getting enough touches by Zay Flowers where they can make something happen.
All right. Let me ask this concerning, especially at offensive line. If our front seven comes out and plays the way they did against ODU, is that good, or do we need to be at a higher level?
I think we need to be at a slightly higher level, and I'll say that we need to finish plays better. We talked about it earlier, whether it's a tackle for loss, whether it's a sack, we need to get home, and we need to make sure when we get home that we finish the tackle.
All right, good deal. So that's know the enemy, both offensive and defensive, taking a look at some players and some of their schemes. Let's flip it over to the Hokie Keys. Told Brian this morning when we talked, or this afternoon when we talked, Brian, I didn't have to change much up from last week what we were discussing, but it's written a little bit differently this time. So obviously the one I had up last week was turnovers, and we've already talked about it a few times tonight. Obviously we were -3 in that department. Then the turnovers led to roughly 17 points of offense for or production for ODU. Again, we talked about the locations. We've talked about where they were, but when you're -3, you should never expect to win a game, ever.
Yeah, I mean, it puts you behind the eight ball, and you couple that with, something we're going to talk about later, and it's just it's so hard to overcome, no matter the level of competition that you're playing. But I mean, turnovers is something that we're going to have to limit. We can't have, we especially can't have them on special teams. That should be, you snap it, you kick it. If we miss it, whatever, but we shouldn't be giving the ball over, and we shouldn't be giving up points on special teams. We should never see that. So
absolutely,
that's number one. Number two, when we talked about Grant Wells, we talked about making some smart throws in the decisions. So
yeah,
two of them were grossly bad decisions by Grant Wells, specifically by Grant Wells. If he cuts down on that, I'll take the ones where there's a miscommunication. I'll take the ones when you're just trying to make a play.
Yeah.
I can't take ones where you see press man and you still throw an out on the inside shoulder. I can't take the ones where, we need 15 yards for a first down and you're throwing a 3-yard check down to a guy with a linebacker on his back. Cut those down, cut those out. We can live to find another down.
Yeah. So for the Hokies, it's clean up. Now, I will say this. BC is not exactly clean. I mean, they had 3 turnovers versus Rutgers, the 2 picks by Jacobics and another fumble. And this was a team, even with 3 turnovers, had a lead under 3 minutes to go. Now, obviously, Rutgers was without their starting quarterback and without their primary weapon in their tight end. So they were missing a few things, but still a team that turned the ball over a lot, including they had 14 points off turnovers, including one that's literally at the doorstep for Rutgers. So I see that if we can, it's one of those like, who cleans up their turnover act faster? The Hokies or Boston College could win this game. And I know we've been talking about it all night. The other key is penalties. We just, I don't expect to be perfect, but if penalties, if we don't clean up penalties by 45 yards, I don't think there's any way we can win this game.
Well, if you look at just the procedural penalties alone, that was about 50 yards against ODU. So if we clean up just the procedural stuff, which is the easiest thing to clean up, you're kind of hitting that benchmark out the gate. If you do that and cut the turnovers at least in half, at least down to 1 or 2, then there's a chance that we can make some magic happen there. You said it, and we've kind of talked about it. ODU. We didn't play well. When you look at what when we look at what BC did, they didn't play well against Rutgers, and you said it.
Oh, you mean say it?
Yeah, go for it.
You say what BC did first.
Well, BC shit the bed against Rutgers.
We let a cow shit in our bed, and then we decided to jump in it. Ours just wasn't one little screw up. Ours was a bunch of screw ups, and literally. And not only did we let it happen, we just continued to wallow in it over and over again. That was the issue. It wasn't necessarily mistakes are made. It's football. Mistakes are going to be made. It's like they were happening over and over and over. And I know Prime mentioned it. And the one thing about, I'll give him big shout out, Price said it the first minute, and this is where I think the difference is. First minute of his presser after the game, the players were pressing. I have to do a better job of not making them press. Within the first minute, he took the accountability. And I think for a lot of people, for the last 5 years, that wasn't the case. What was it always, Brian? It was always that E word.
Execution.
It was always execution. And Brian eventually got to the point where he said, well, motherfucker, you're the one coaching them. You need to teach them to execute better. And you need to say that you need to teach them to execute better.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's at some point it all comes back to you. Either you're not preparing them, you're not coaching them well enough to be prepared, or you're recruiting the wrong type of players you need for them to be prepared. So it's at some point it's coming back to you. We can make excuses for a season here or a season there of, okay, we just don't have the right guys, or we're not getting it done. When you start seeing a pattern, that's when it's got to go. So that's the difference. And I'm glad that we have some accountability. But at some point, obviously, in this regime, accountability is not going to get you where you want to be either. Eventually, you got to fix those things, go out there, and get it done.
All right. So speaking of getting it done, I think the third key, and this is one that was actually fun to look at and think about, was the rushing offense we had, even with a poorly blocked game or a slightly above average block game on the running versus that BC run defense. We've already mentioned it. Don't let the stats fool you. When there is a 54-yard scoop and score, everybody remember this, they take it off of the rushing totals. Realistically, the Hokies went over 200 yards. Realistically, 5.3 a carry. I'm looking at the Rutgers game. You saw it, Brian. I'm looking at the data. Rutgers went 42 for 212. All three of their touchdowns came on the ground. Give me a reason why is that, Brian? Why did Rutgers, who isn't the most talented team, basically get 5 a carry on BC?
They're a little soft in the middle. I think we have some opportunities between the tackles to hurt them. They do have some good players out on the edge in the spill area, and they're going to try to spill the rush out to those areas and let those guys clean up. But they are a little softer in the middle, and I think that's where we can take an advantage. You got a safety playing linebacker still learning to get off blocks. I think that's where we can kind of make some hay. And if they don't clean it up, I think that's our opportunity.
Yeah. And this isn't just like a one-time thing because BC was not good last year. They were 92nd at like 178 a game. So this is clearly an ongoing issue for Hafley and his coaching staff with the potential of the scheme change. Even though it's a 4-2-5, something more traditional college, not playing it the college way, which walking safeties up to the line, filling gaps, you're going to, without having the correct defensive personnel, you're going to give up some yards. So, it'll be really interesting to see, what team is able to turn it all around. And that's where we land here at our game predictions. And, 3 weeks ago, I'm sitting here, we're saying 9-3, we're saying floor of 5-7. And right now, some of the games I foresaw as potential wins, I'm recalculating and I can't do it until I see change. So unfortunately for me, I've got to take BC and I got to take them, and it's going to be a dogfight. I got to go 28-24. Brian's heading up to Blacksburg on Saturday. I wish I could. I've got some things going on. But what do you think, Brian? Are you going to be driving back down 81 Saturday night happy, or?
It might be a long drive back. And I'm kind of right there with you, and I'm actually with you in a little bit more dramatic fashion. I've got us coming up 1 point short, 28-27, BC. I need to see it. I need to see us improve. I need to see, with improvement, does that mean that the offense looks a little better, more cohesive in terms of putting points on the board? And until I see that, it's hard to trust that we're going to see significant difference. I think there's going to be improvement. Don't get me wrong. I think we're going to see a good amount of improvement week 1 to week 2. I don't think we're going to be in that. I don't think we're going to be plus 10 in penalties. I don't think we're going to be at 5 turnovers, but I don't know if we're going to do enough cleaning up relative to what BC does to get it done.
All right. So Brian's at 28-27. I'm at 28-24, both going BC. Hope we're sitting here 7 days from now saying we're completely wrong.
Yeah, we were wrong last week. I'd love to be wrong again this week.
Love it. Would love it. All right, let's go real quick. Do big screeners, Brian. I'll lead with this one as well. I am hoping after the Hokies prove me wrong, I'm going to probably be watching very closely the BYU Baylor game, obviously future Big 12. That's going to be out at BYU. Great atmosphere out there. I expect it to be a brawl. Baylor is getting 3.5 points on the road. I think this game's going to be tight anyway. So when the team I shade and feel a little bit better about is getting points, I'm going to take Baylor in 3.5. Both teams are ranked, Brian, by the way, just so you want to know. I know you will be in Blacksburg, and what game are you going to be trying to check out at Sharkies, PKs, Tots, wherever you may land once you're down in the homeland?
Yeah, I'm going to actually take a look at that Tennessee Pitt game. I think there's some interest there on both sides. We obviously got, Hendon quarterbacking the Tennessee squad there, while we got, Pitt is a game that we're going to look towards later in the year. Couple 757 products on that Pitt team, so you got some interest there as well. So when I look at that, I feel like this is, based on what I saw week 1, this is Tennessee right now. They've got a 7 point. I'm going to lay the 7. I'm taking Tennessee.
All right, he is taking Tennessee with a 7. I'd be with you on that. Just because of what we saw from Pitt's defense. And if you can say, well, that's the first game of the season, yeah, but they had a game in front of them they needed to get up for. And essentially their offense and partially West Virginia saved them. It'll be interesting to see that game. All right, Brian, one more thing. It's not on the rundown, but I got to let you rant. Preseason rankings.
Fuck them. It's the most ludicrous thing ever invented, especially in a situation where all the future rankings are judged against the original rankings. And that's my biggest problem, is that, I saw, I forget who it was, but, I retweeted it. Someone was on the timeline.
Sally.
We got a blue check on the timeline trying to talk against a 12-team playoff because Oregon got their shit kicked in. Well, they also lost their head coach last year, and now we're figuring out, okay, this Oregon team isn't an 11th-ranked team as it currently stands. We learned that they're not an 11th-ranked team. We didn't learn that, an 11 team got their shit kicked in, so an 11 ranked at the end of the season is going to be the same fucking thing. No. It's not going to be the same thing. Because we will have played games at that point, and whoever that 11 seed is will have a more deserving reason to be a fucking 11 seed than Oregon.
This is so much fun every year to get you to go on the preseason rankings rant, because there's always somebody doing something, talking about how, especially late in the year, you really want to get Brian, come back if Oregon's like 4-8 and somebody looking at, well, Georgia's beat a few top 10 teams, top 15 teams, but I'll be like,
was it week 1?
That shouldn't count.
Was it even in September?
And you've always said rankings should be there. It's one reason
I don't mind power rankings. I have a problem with the official top 25 rankings.
Yeah. The official
Let ESPN do their power rankings. Let whoever wants to do power rankings based on, preseason, early season. Don't make it an official top 25 because, again, it throws off the calculations the whole rest of the season.
Brian would be okay if you went after 3 or 4 games. At least you have a body of work then, right?
Yeah.
You're 3-0. You're 3-0 and you beat 3 really crappy teams. You're 3-0 and you beat 2 really good teams and 1 above average team. Your 3-0 is not the same as their 3-0.
Yeah, give me rankings the first Monday of October.
There you go. That's one reason one thing you've always liked about the playoff is they go deep into the season before they turn them on. They go 7 weeks in.
7 weeks in, and at least then, the problem with the committee is that when it all comes down to it, they're going to put in a blue blood that brings in the most money over another team. And it's most of the time. But in terms of how we get there, at least the process is better than the preseason shit.
Well, my comment on preseason rankings, they're about as good as an ejector seat in a helicopter. Think about that one as you get ready to go to bed tonight, y'all. Brian, anything breaking?
I'm not seeing anything, buddy.
All right, nothing breaking. The depth chart came out. You're feeling a lot better. Seeing Calais, feeling better about the wide receiver room.
Yeah, we got a couple more young receivers making that depth chart. We got Jalen Jones, thankfully seems to be back up to speed where they're putting him on the depth chart. I saw Christian Moss on there as well. Those two are going to be big in terms of depth at the receiver position. We also saw Caleb on there, whether he's thrown on as a courtesy or whether he's going to be good to go for the game. Obviously, it's probably too early to tell there, but hopefully he's good to go against BC. And then we also saw, obviously, Breon Murray back in there. So coming off the suspension.
And Tisdale.
We found out more about that. Yeah. Apparently eligibility situation. So he's,
weird.
Yeah. I don't think we're going to see him this week. He's apparently week to week as they resolve that eligibility issue. But at least, we know what it is now. We know he's not in the doghouse for anything, off the field. He's not, his play hasn't fallen off to a point where, he can't help us. So those are two things that are, I think, positives to take away from that.
Very nice. All right. So now that we got the couple breaking things I wrote down here, that's on me. We are going to wrap up this episode of the Boundary Corner podcast. I'm Curtis Wilson.
I'm Brian Siegel.
Visit our website, boundarycornerbt.com, to listen to all of our episodes. While you're there, don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Subscribe on our YouTube account and your favorite podcast source, including Spotify, Amazon, and Apple Podcasts. Please leave reviews. We prefer 5 stars. We will take any star with your critiques, please. As always, we let our buddy Jason Long, he plays us out every week. Check him out on his new website, jasonlongmusic.com, where it will link you to all of his music on Apple, Spotify, and his YouTube and Facebook pages. Jason, no events this weekend. Interesting. So maybe you can give Jason a call if you feel like you can't make it back to Richmond.
Hey, Jason, can I crash here? Let's do it.
We'll see. But anyways, we thank you for listening. As always, let's go.
Hokies!